Imagine walking home on a quiet night, doing nothing wrong, breaking no law, carrying no weapon, threatening nobody, just trying to reach your home safely. The streetlights are on, the road is almost empty, and every step feels normal because this is something millions of people do every single day. But for Sarah Everard, that ordinary walk became the last walk of her life. She was not lost. She was not careless. She was not involved in anything dangerous. She was simply going home. And the most terrifying part of her story is not only that a monster found her. The most terrifying part is that the monster wore the uniform of the law. Sarah Everard was a young woman with a life, a family, friends, dreams, and a future that should have continued. She should have reached home that night. She should have woken up the next morning. She should have lived many more years, laughed with people she loved, made plans, grown older, and been safe in a country where people are told to trust the police. But that trust was turned into a weapon against her. Wayne Couzens, a serving police officer, used the power of his position to stop her. He used authority, fear, and the uniform to control the moment. Sarah did what so many people would do when confronted by a police officer. She obeyed, and that is what makes this case so chilling. The very system that should have protected her became the doorway to her death. This was not just a random tragedy. This was a national wound. When people heard what happened, the pain spread far beyond Sarah's family. Women across the country felt something break inside them, because every woman understood the fear behind that story. The fear of walking alone, the fear of being followed, the fear of being blamed, the fear of doing everything right and still not being safe. Sarah's death became a mirror held up to society, and what people saw in that mirror was horrifying. It showed that women were not simply afraid for no reason. It showed that the danger was real. It showed that even trust could become dangerous when power was placed in the wrong hands. After Sarah's murder, people cried, people gathered, people demanded answers. They did not want violence. They wanted accountability. They wanted to know how a man like Wayne Couzens was allowed to remain in the police. They wanted to know why warning signs were missed. They wanted to know why women were told again and again to change their behavior instead of society changing the systems that failed them. Do not walk alone. Do not wear headphones. Text someone when you get home. Hold your keys. Cross the road. Stay alert. Smile less. Be careful. Be polite. Be afraid. Women were exhausted from being given survival instructions instead of protection. And then came the political response. Nigel Farage told people not to use Sarah Everard's murder to spread hatred toward police or men. On the surface, that sounds reasonable. Of course, no tragedy should be used to attack innocent people. Of course, not every police officer is Wayne Couzens. Of course, not every man is a predator. But the problem was not that people were asking for blind hate. The problem was that people were asking for accountability. They were asking why a serving officer was able to kidnap, rape, and murder a woman. They were asking why institutional failures were ignored. They were asking why women's fear is treated as emotional exaggeration until a woman is dead. When Sarah died, the message from some voices was restraint. Stay calm. Do not generalize. Do not blame the police. Do not turn grief into anger. Do not let this become a movement against authority. But here is the question that cuts deep. Why is restraint demanded from some people's grief, while rage is encouraged in other cases? Why are some tragedies treated as moments for unity, patience, and careful language, while other tragedies are turned into political fire? This is where the phrase selective outrage becomes impossible to ignore. Then came the case of Henry Noah, another heartbreaking death, another young life lost, another family destroyed forever. No innocent person should die like that. His pain matters. His family's grief matters. His life mattered. But when public figures respond to one death by asking for calm and respond to another by encouraging rage, people notice. They notice the difference in tone. They notice who is told to stay peaceful and who is told to be furious. They notice when a tragedy involving a woman killed by a police officer is treated as something that must not damage the image of policing, while another tragedy is used to attack political enemies, diversity training, minorities, or entire communities. That is the heart of the hypocrisy. Sarah Everard's death exposed terrifying police abuse, but people were warned not to turn against the police. Henry Nowak's death exposed serious questions about policing response and public safety, but suddenly rage was acceptable. Suddenly anger was not dangerous. Suddenly anger was pure. Suddenly anger was useful. And that difference is not accidental. That difference is political. Real justice should not depend on who the victim is, who the killer is, what race or religion is involved, what political agenda can be built around the case, or whether the tragedy helps one side win an argument. Real justice means Sarah Everard deserves truth and accountability. Henry Nowak deserves truth and accountability. Every victim deserves truth and accountability. But no victim's grave should become a stage for selective politics. No family's pain should be used like fuel for hatred. And no tragedy should be twisted to protect powerful institutions in one case and attack vulnerable communities in another. Sarah's case forced Britain to ask a terrifying question. What happens when the person who says, "You are under arrest," is the person you should be running from? That question should have shaken every institution to its core. It should have led to deep reform, honest reflection, and serious accountability. It should have made people ask how many warning signs are ignored when the person wearing the uniform is seen as automatically trustworthy. It should have made society listen to women who have been saying for years that fear is part of their daily life. But too often, when women speak about fear, they are told they are exaggerating. When women speak about harassment, they are asked what they were wearing. When women speak about danger, they are told not all men. When women speak about police failure, they are told not all officers. But when a woman is dead, those same people say it is a tragedy. The problem is that women needed to be believed before the tragedy, not only mourned after it. Sarah Everard's story is painful because it destroys the illusion of safety. She was not doing anything reckless. She was not in the wrong place for the wrong reason. She was walking home, that is all. And if walking home can become a death sentence because someone abuses power, then the issue is much bigger than one criminal. It becomes a question about systems. It becomes a question about culture. It becomes a question about who gets protected and who gets doubted. And this is why selective outrage is so dangerous. It teaches the public to care only when a tragedy fits their politics. It teaches people to be angry only when anger benefits their side. It teaches society to ignore patterns when they are uncomfortable and exaggerate patterns when they are useful. It turns victims into symbols instead of human beings. Sarah becomes a debate about police image. Henry becomes a debate about race, religion, diversity, or political correctness. And somewhere in the middle of all this noise, the human being disappears. Sarah Everard was not a slogan. Henry Nowak was not a slogan. They were people. They had names, families, lives, and futures. Their deaths should make us more honest, not more divided. Their stories should force institutions to improve, not force communities to hate each other. Their pain should make us demand equal accountability, not selective anger. The real question is not whether people should be angry. Of course they should be angry. Anger is natural when innocent people are killed. Anger is natural when systems fail. Anger is natural when power protects itself. But anger must be honest. Anger must be consistent. Anger must be directed at wrongdoing, not at innocent groups. If a police officer commits a horrific crime, demand police accountability. If police fail a dying victim, demand police accountability. If a murderer kills an innocent person, demand justice for that victim. But do not ask for calm when the truth is uncomfortable, and then ask for rage when the truth is politically useful. That is not justice, that is performance. Sarah's final moments should haunt the country because she trusted authority and was betrayed in the worst possible way. Her death should remind everyone that power without accountability is dangerous. It should remind us that women's safety is not a small issue, not a social media trend, not an emotional overreaction. It is a matter of life and death. And when people marched, cried, and demanded change, They were not attacking every police officer. They were saying no uniform should ever place someone above suspicion. They were saying no institution should be so protected that victims become secondary to reputation. Henry Nowak's story should also bring anger, grief, and serious questions. If police mishandled the situation, that must be investigated. If mistakes were made, they must be exposed. If a young man was failed when he needed help, people have every right to demand answers. But the same rule must apply. Do not turn one person's crime into hatred against a whole community. Do not turn one family's grief into a weapon against people who had nothing to do with it. Do not pretend justice means collective blame. Because once society accepts selective outrage, nobody is truly safe. Today, one tragedy is used for one agenda. Tomorrow, another tragedy is used for the opposite agenda. The truth gets buried. The victim becomes a political tool, and the people who should be held accountable escape behind the smoke. Sarah Everard deserved better than a country arguing over whether people were allowed to be angry. Henry Nowak deserved better than a country arguing over how his death could be used politically. Both deserved a society brave enough to ask hard questions without turning grief into hate. Both deserved accountability that does not change depending on race, gender, religion, uniform, or political benefit. So yes, people should be angry, but they should be angry at hypocrisy, angry at institutional failure, angry at abuse of power, angry at the way victims are selectively defended, angry at the way some deaths are softened and others are weaponized, angry at the double standard that tells one grieving group to calm down and another to release rage. Sarah Everard walked home and never made it. That sentence alone should break the heart. She was kidnapped, raped, and murdered by a man who carried the authority of the law. That truth should never be minimized. It should never be hidden behind "not all police" or "do not attack the institution." Accountability is not hate. Accountability is the only way trust can ever be rebuilt. And Henry Nowak's death should also be treated with dignity, seriousness, and humanity. His life should not be reduced to a political talking point. His family's pain should not be used to spread fear of entire communities. Justice for him means truth, accountability, and punishment for the guilty, not hatred toward the innocent. The real message is simple. If you demand calm for Sarah but rage for Henry, people will see the double standard. If you protect institutions in one case but attack communities in another, people will see the politics. If your outrage depends on the identity of the victim or the accused, then it is not moral outrage. It is selective outrage. And selective outrage does not heal a nation. It divides it. It turns grief into propaganda. It turns victims into weapons. It turns justice into a performance. Sarah Everard's story should make us cry. Henry Nowak's story should make us cry. But after the tears, there must be honesty. Not hate, not excuses, not political games. Honesty. Because a society that only cares about victims when they are useful is a society that has lost its soul.